Hey Collective, and welcome back to Altruistic Channel. It's Al, and today's video is going to be focusing on something I touched on in the last video, which was regarding the rise of the turquoise leadership and that altruistic type of mentality that's coming together in the divine universe where energies are being pulled towards one another that are to bring harmony and a more balanced state of understanding to the collective. And so I wanted to speak more about the relevance that that would have to us as a whole. And so one of the things that I had noticed when I was looking into the whole spiral dynamics was the fact that they had mentioned that each evolutionary jump has a different coloration in this model. And what it does is it helps us understand the different stages of human development. And one of the things that we had discussed that I had noticed with Leo over at actualize.org is we're still working on the turquoise development, which would be a different kind of mindset, one that's not materialistic or egoish, one built out of the material world and more in the etheric world, and that brought energies together that were more sublime, something more divinely guided. And so the relevance that we have at this point in this particular reset is the fact that the junction now allows us to do something great out of something very dismal and kind of dire. And as we know, we are all questioning society at this point. A lot of us are unhappy with the way things are going, but we are giving away our power and understanding that we have the power within us to change the world. All we need to do is speak our mind and start to find other voices that bring that energy forward into the universe. And one of the things that I wanted to focus on was what that can do to the environment as a whole. So let's say that individual people are being guided by something higher than themselves, whether it be Allah, God, the Buddha in my case, or any type of mentor-protege energy that you're finding that is outside of what you can rationally understand, but that you're being guided towards something greater, something that your soul really yearns to do. And if you're in that mode, then you start to realize that your energy changes from within. And suddenly you start questioning things and you start finding your own truth and you bring balance into your own environment. And so you become intolerant of things that just no longer align with your vibration. And when we speak to vibration, what we're speaking about is the energy that we pull in and put out. It's kind of an ebb and flow that is created within every leader, right? And as a leader, in general terms, you understand that you set the bar for other things. So in this context, what your vibration is basically what is it that you are focusing your energy on. If you are about uplifting society and finding a bridge that brings all people together as opposed to individuating them and putting everybody into segmented, fractured areas, then you're being divisive. And so that doesn't really apply here. For the leadership that we're speaking to, there comes a point when you have to rise above it and kind of put everyone's perspective into your consideration, but understand that you can't make everybody happy all the time. So what is the best outcome for all of us? And that's kind of what we're focusing on. So in the vibration that I'm speaking to, your focus is more on the beauty out of sorrow. Your focus is more on harmonizing the frequencies, no matter how chaotic they are around you. You've learned to put away or put aside individuals that no longer serve your higher good, which is for your own evolution. And so when you beget that vibrational output, then you start to bring that in. And so what we're doing as pioneers, if you will, of the pilgrims of this new phase of consciousness, is that we're establishing a protocol, if you will, or we're setting the bar for others to understand what it is that we're talking about in a way that's very physical. Although we are, etheric beings and we're just here temporarily, that doesn't mean that we're not resonating with others and that we don't understand one another just by coming into contact with each other, because the vibrations pull each other almost like magnets. And so in that sequence, what the turquoise leadership would be doing is focusing their energy on solutions only, right? We know what the problems are. We know that we're weighted down, and we know that the XYZ will happen if we do this, this, and that. But what if we try something new? What if we try meeting a spiritual leader's concerns and have it be discussed with a scientist and have both of them meet eye level? If there's no agreement within them, then there's something wrong. We still need to work on it. And so the turquoise leadership would be that regime of people who the divine finds worthy and strong enough to stand the test of time and to be there able to say, hey, we're not going to take your rights away. We're going to give you more rights to say no, or we're going to give you more rights to say yes, but we're not going to take your abilities away. We're just going to give you a wider plethora of opportunities to choose from. Because as we see in the world, it's not growing larger. It seems to be getting smaller and smaller and smaller. People are checking out left, right, and center. But we're going to get into that conversation towards the end of the video. But what my focus is on this is to help you understand what it is that the vision would be for all of us as humankind, essentially, which would be that we want to raise the vibration of each individual and make them feel the worthiness that they possess and why they are not a detriment to society, but they are an addition, and find what it is that makes them so unique and bring that quality forward. And the only way to really do that is to start from a leader standpoint. And so with the turquoise leadership, you would be setting the bar again for everyone else to see what it is that you are conveying, and see that that is something that their soul is attracted to. So you're bringing in a vibration to yourself that's almost like a very powerful black hole, but in this case would be like a white hole, all jokes aside, that you are possessing. You're bringing gravity towards you, and you're breaking down stereotypes, fears, insecurities, egos, and so forth by introducing yourself in the way that you are internally, which is your truth. And so when you speak your truth and you find others that speak at that vibrational truth, where they may not always agree with each other, but they are on the same path, they are trying to ascend and trying to get out of the chaos and realize that the material world is the illusion. And I wanted to point out in this particular part that there was a wonderful interview that popped up on my magic feed, because y'all know I have that YouTube magic feed that shows up with content that I have no idea why it's there until I look at it. And it was the Justine Bateman. She had written a book called Fame, I believe it was called, and she was talking to Larry King, and it popped up on my feed. And so I stopped to look at it because I like Justine Bateman. And she was having this very interesting conversation with him about how fame changes your understanding of reality. And so let's use that as a perfect example of what I mean. So when we live in a material world and we seek materialism, then our entire lives is surrounded by that. And so everyone in our environment is going to reflect what it is that we are pursuing. The only problem with that is that when you don't have a spiritual center, it's very easy to be corruptive if you are surrounded by corruptive people. And so with the example she was talking about, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, I'm not quoting her, but the point she was making is that when you are famous, it morphs your understanding of what is real and what is not real, because suddenly everyone is reflecting that you have the ability to do no wrong. And so you start to bring that persona in. So then you start getting like tables, and you start spending too much money, and you start doing all this stuff because your reality, what you perceive reality to be, is that you can do no wrong. But in the real world, when fame starts to fade, was her point, when you start to realize in our spiritual circles that things just aren't adding up, then it starts to make you fall backwards, and it makes you feel weighted even more, because you're realizing that what you thought was real, what your world was, is not anywhere near what is actually there. And that's what we as a collective are finding ourselves now under siege with, because we're starting to question things that just don't make sense. Why does this verse in this particular book contradict themselves? And so you start to ask these questions. And so when you find your own balance and you find your own answers, then you feel an urge to share it, but you have to find a way where you're not combative with anybody else. If people don't want to hear it, then you just let that go. You can't go into the darkness anymore, because people are just going to drown. It is what it is. But for our leadership, what we're looking for is others who are also finding their own paths. All paths lead to a higher wisdom if you truly look. And so it doesn't matter what the name of the puppy is. It just matters that you are focused on the puppy. And so if you are looking for higher guidance and you're looking for a way to help humanity change the course that we're on, then you are probably in the same vibrational frequency, although there are going to be different levels, right? Someone who is completely cured of materialism, someone who still understands that there's a balance. You want to survive, and you want to make that all happen, but you understand that to truly hold the key to open that gate, you must relinquish control of how that comes to you and what it is that you're after. But how do you, as a leader, then set the bar for others to follow you when it's something that seems a little bit abstract? Well, you do it by coming together. When people see a pool of very important people talking to each other. That's why Academy Awards are so interesting to other people, because it's like the peer group. Or you see a bunch of CEOs coming together for some sort of lecture. It becomes more interesting to the general public, because they're trying to find out what it is that this group of people is focused on. And so there's an interest level that starts to raise. Again, raising the vibration of humanity. So for those of us on the turquoise frequency, those of us who are on that vibrational pole where the divine is saying, hey, you've established a huge kingdom. You've done very well in the material world. are you happy? And if the answer is anywhere near no, I want to do more, or yeah, I'm happy, but I want to do something bigger for society, then you're probably being pulled towards the turquoise vibration. You're being pulled towards something grander, something that has a vision that you may not always see, because everyone within the group brings something different to the group. So let's talk and explore, now that you have a better understanding of what it is to be that turquoise group, people who are going to be meeting each other at eye level and saying, hey, you come from an evangelical background, and I am an occultist. Okay, so we're not going to disagree. We're not going to sit there and try to change each other's perspective. We're going to bring what we know to the table, and the table is going to discuss all the topics and find a consensus, something that makes sense to all people, that does not devalue your evangelical faith or your occultist faith, or whatever. I mean, it's not a faith, but whatever that is. And so meeting at that table and being responsible and being in a place of self-empowerment, you can look at someone in the eye and say, well, we're going to agree to disagree. And then that literally is the most extent of the drama that's going to come from this group. And it sounds ridiculously impossible to do, but it's super easy. I do it all the time. I talk to people, and as soon as I hear that it's just not going to go anywhere, I leave it alone. I just switch the topic. You can't save someone. Only they can save themselves. You can't conform someone to your belief system, because then you're taking their rights away. And that's one of the problems that we've had with organized religion, because faith is incredibly powerful, and it's something that all human beings, in my personal opinion, need. But when you start naming the puppy and saying that you must abide by this to get to this, then you're blocking people from getting on the path to where they need to be, right? And so this group understands that every path is valuable. I cannot stress this enough. To me, an evangelical preacher or a Jewish person or someone who is a scientist all have equal value to where I'm coming from and from where the divine sees things, because at the end, if these brains come together and actually change their way of operating and bring unity to the world, then the planet follows. And when you set that bar, that's a legacy that all human beings are grasping to, and they want that. It's a place to leave your immortality. It's a stance where you can actually transcend what it is in this world and bring unity to the world. And isn't that what all souls want to do? To leave a legacy that they can come back to over and over again, even if it's just energetic. And so then we get into these different philosophical conversations and theological things, and people bring it up, but we've failed to get there yet. And this turquoise leadership is the opportunity for the world to see how that plays out. And that's the importance behind what I'm saying when I say the turquoise leadership and why I'm calling you forward. It's because it doesn't matter how we manifest. It's about bringing each other together, because when people see the interaction between brilliant minds that the divine has chosen, you know who you are. I know who you are. Well, I know a lot of you. I don't know everybody, because not all energies are pulling towards each other. I have a thing where I'm very candid and very honest about my faith and about my life. And people can get turned off on that. Well, that's on them. Then they're going to miss the opportunity, because what I'm looking at is scientists who completely contradict everything that I say, but I find them fascinating energetically. And I have to follow what the divine is saying. If they hold my interest, find out why they hold my interest. See if there's something that we vehemently disagree with, which usually the divine won't bring me, because, a lot of people disagree. That we've gone down that road, and look what's happened. It's like child molesters and rapists and all of this corruption and hypocrisy and just all this stuff, because we let what divides us block us from uniting. And a house divided will fall, and we're falling really, really fast. And so our leadership, the people that I'm attracted to, are brilliant minds that have their own views on things. But if I'm not willing to explore where they're coming from, then I stay stagnant like society is, and we never grow. So this group is all about leading that pack and saying, hey, Bill Gates, Al, you can be no one in the world and be absolutely someone to God. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to be materially powerful, because if you're spiritually powerful, you already are ruling something elsewhere. It's not about names, it's not about titles, it's not about ego, it's about what you bring to the table. So I bring a lot to the table. Bill Gates would bring a lot to the table. Aaron Doty, he brings a lot to the table. Anderson Cooper brings a lot to the table. There are a lot of people who have mastered something in their vocation or in their world or in spiritual terms that others might find redeeming or find value in, because it gives them an opportunity to find something new about themselves. Hey, I don't agree with everything he said, but this one sentence really stuck out at me. That's growth. That's how we evolve past stagnation. And so let's focus on how we do that as individuals. And so this video is pretty much centered around that type of energy. So one of the things that worked really well for me is that I have a mentor-protege relationship with the Buddha. I don't know if any of you will understand what I mean by this, but those of you who are in esoteric theosophy, or those who are very spiritual, you are under Christ, or you are under Jesus, or you are under whatever your house is. You are under a master. You're under someone who is mentoring you as a soul, and it goes along with what your soul's journey is and what you want to do with the world. And so for me, the Buddha picked me, and it was because I have I'm very spiritual, and I see things from all sides. I transcend the material world on a regular basis. Like, to me, materialism is okay, but if you're going to try to hit on me, then I'm going to look at you and have a sense of humor and be like, well, that's great that you got me a car, but why don't you go home and straighten your pubes, bring them back when they're braided, and I might look at you sideways. Like, that might be like hubba. That's where, you know what I mean? So, but I transcend the material world, and I look at things in a very comedic way, and I find that I'm very bonded to the Buddha. And so it took me a long time to understand what that dynamic was, because I was still being trained, so to speak. And some of you are under Jesus. Some of you really, really understand the power of the Bible. You understand what Catholicism is. You understand what it is to be a Christian. And so for you, instead of looking at other houses, and I would recommend for you, instead of looking at other houses and judging them, looking at your own house and being proud of that, and being able to stand at a table with other people and speak your truth is the ultimate reward for you, at least for me. So where's this divisive, you must do what I say thing come from? Because that doesn't gel. Like I've said before, the divine would never tolerate women being secondary citizens to men. That's a human characteristics. And we'll get to the word human in a minute, because there's two things going on there. But you see my point. So how do we discuss this in a way that doesn't offend the other party? Now, you can't make all the people happy all the time. It's never going to happen. But for the pool of people I'm speaking to, you understand what I'm speaking to. I'm speaking to the fact, I said speaking to a lot in that. Sorry, redundant. Me. I did my hair today, so I think it's the hairspray. It's messing with my head. But the thing is, you understand what I'm saying in this context, is the fact that you still want to honor the other person's faith, because what that does is they have to honor your faith. And so you don't have to, but it does. The energy does that naturally. It counteracts the other one. So understand that, like, for me, running into a Bible-thumping person, well, I shouldn't say Bible-thumping because that's kind of derogatory. Let's say Bible believer, because I read the Bible all the time. So, but I have questions. You see what I'm saying? So who better to speak to than someone who actually has mastered what it means of the word, right? Or if I have a question, like I have this big thing about Bill Gates. I've said it before. But my big question for him and his wife Melinda is, because he's such a genius, is it possible to program an AI with spirituality? And what would that entail? Okay, that's a really far out there question. But for someone who's very spiritual, I still would want to know the answer to this, because it doesn't change my faith. It doesn't change anything about my life. But that's a turquoise conversation. That is something that very important people would want to vacillate about. Okay, well, how does that happen? And so that's kind of where we're going. And so for those of you who understand that context, then you understand what the group would be doing. And so then it can tackle the more mundane the topics that come with the material world. And so that's one of the gifts that I have. And so I'm looking for other people who have their own gifts. Well, hey, I have this theory that there's 22 dimensions, and here I can tell you what they are, and this would be my expression. And probably everybody in the turquoise group would be like, go on. And it would be, you don't have to vie for these people's attention. It's just about connecting with each other, because once we hear you and we have even a remote interest in your topic, then now you're building bridges, and now suddenly the collective is starting to raise their vibration, because our dialogue, whatever it is, should be a public thing. It should be something that can be seen by the world, and I think televised, because of the fact that the more that we prosper and grow and from within, the more that they will understand what it is we're talking about. Remember, I have one of the sweetest gifts in the world that I thought was a big, big problem for a while, which was that I was undereducated, because I decided to educate myself, and I went through that whole Scientology thing, and it was a whole thing. But because of my specific, unbelievably unique experience in this lifetime, I can see things that others cannot see yet. But it's interesting to other intellectuals to understand where I'm coming from sometimes, because I'm the person that will ask a question. I will understand everything that you have to say with expansive universe dialogue, NASA, super high IQ S&T as a kid, so I totally get all of the conversation. I'm the person who converts it to a basic question that someone who is not in your circle would get. I'll be like, Wait, I think I speak for everyone. Huh? Buffy. I'm like the male Buffy. I'm a spiritual Buffy. And so that's very important for this type of leadership. And so all of you will have your own unique qualities that make it something that all people can access information. That's why we're being pulled together by the divine, is because we bring that flavor that will connect to 20,000 people behind you. You see what I'm saying? Because you represent something. You are a statesman. You are a democratic leader of a new world, which is based on a balance between spirituality, fact, and religion. Because there's a difference between spirituality and religion, right? Religion is dogmatic in the bad sense. But like anybody who studies astrology or any type of psychic thing, there's always a negative, but there's always a super positive too. Remember, everything is balanced. So there's a lot to be offered in religion. And we do this thing where scientists feel like they're put at odds with faith, well, religion in this case, because both of you have faith. Science has faith in science, then humanity. They believe that we can answer our own questions and that we beget our own results. Religion teaches that a higher sense, a higher consciousness they call God or Allah, they put names on it. And there's nothing wrong with that because it helps them funnel all their attention in one direction. So, like, again, it's all a good thing. But on the negative side, they also bring, subjugation of women. They also bring racism. They also bring a lot of other stuff, right? But scientists do the same thing. Now they're like taking people's rights away because they think they know all the answers, and they're making people get shots that don't want to get shots, and they're being really, really like kind of Hitlerish about it. So both sides have positive and negative aspects to it. Those of us at the turquoise frequency would be the ones to tackle those type of topics. Well, okay, how do we meet the middle ground? Okay, because we do need to protect society from something that is the other word, but they're not using that word. They're using this P word, not the PL word. So where's the discrepancy? And so if we speak about it and we do it in a way that's very candid and open, and somehow does it in a way that we do it in a way that others can view it if they're interested, then that energy begets more energy and begets more energy, and suddenly it becomes something that people really want to know. Instead of the news, which is very glorified and very, very, I don't know what happened in his administration, but y'all have credibility is just gone for me. Like I can't even watch the news anymore. I used to have to go to like the UK to watch it, but even there, it's like everybody's like under this whole hypnotic place where nobody asks questions. And I'm not castigating anybody. I'm not throwing stones, but just as an part of the intelligent community, I'm just looking at this going, you used to represent us. You used to ask the questions that the layman couldn't ask. What happened? Where did you go? And that really leaves a big hole in society because it brings anger. It brings resentment. You want to squash the anger in the world? Then turquoise, come together. Let's do this. Talk to each other. Okay, I understand where you're coming from, but here's my question. And then answer the question. And because you know that everybody is not gunning for you, nobody's trying to get at you, nobody's trying to manipulate you, nobody's trying to motivate you in a negative way. They're trying to engage your intelligence in a way that brings you happiness, because answer a question well, and the world rejoices. Answer it negatively, okay, so you didn't do it. Well, then look at what they asked you, find the answer, bring it to the world, and rejoice again. All paths lead to rejoice if you're willing to do the work, and that's what the turquoise group would be doing, is uniting the planet in ways that we have a tit for tat. If you think that this is the right, perfect answer, then be ready to answer the question from the opposing side, who is like evangelical. If you're a scientist, you say this and that, and someone's very dogmatic about their faith, then you should be, that's the first party you should be answering first, is the dogmatic type, right? Because we're trying to bring the vibration up. And so we know that a lot of people on the planet are very dogmatic about their faith, and they should be for who they are. Let's be honest. Every person should be guided towards something higher. It doesn't matter if you believe in aliens. It doesn't matter if you believe in Allah. It doesn't matter if you believe in science. It doesn't matter if you believe in God and Christ and Jesus. Whatever you believe in, if it brings you wholeness and it brings you sovereignty in a spiritual sense, then who are we to break that down of someone else? We don't. We build them up. We have everyone heard equally, because what it does is they represent a delegation, and I'm really big on the delegates. This delegation is super important for our planet, and that's what this turquoise leadership would be. So how do we identify it as individuals? And so I'm going to give you a little breakdown of what I've done personally and what the divine has guided me. Well, the divine Buddha and Christ, because I'm very lucky. I'm very guided by a lot of more important not more important, I would say sophisticated energies around me that guide me in very interesting ways that only I would know. Because you have to understand that each of you are your own individual frequency. You have your own energy signature is what I'm trying to say. And so the divine will speak to you, divine, God, source. I'm just going to say divine just to make it, how about source of all creation? Either divine or source of creation. It encompasses all of you equally. All of you should feel very validated because I appreciate everybody. Every house is welcome here. Okay. So the source of all creation speaks to you in a way that speaks directly to your soul. It's like a trail of breadcrumbs that is left for every individual to find their own way. Someone who has been victimized by a spousal abuse situation will find themselves suddenly being exposed randomly out of nowhere. Usually it starts with a thought. They're like, I gotta get out of this. And the moment that they recognize that thought and it goes into the universe, Source usually brings you a breadcrumb that says you suddenly find Oprah's show coming through your thing, or you find it online and it's in your feed, and you look at it and it's a woman who's speaking your language, who is talking just like you do. And it builds that first step for you to go, oh, I'm not alone. It doesn't register the rest of it, but you just understand that you're not alone. And then all of a sudden, the next day, you find 2 more things on there with how to get out. And you go, oh, there's a way out. You don't go anything further, but you see what I'm saying? Each little breadcrumb brings you out of whatever situation you're in. For a scientist, excuse me, when a scientist comes into a query and they're really, really fascinated with the topic, like I have this huge thing about artificial intelligence, spirituality, and how those two could mix, because I see things that y'all don't see. But the thing is, I would love to pick the brain of a scientist. Now, if a scientist comes into a query that they don't have the answer to, they do something called a hypothesis, and with the hypothesis, then they venture to prove it. Same principle. You're all following breadcrumbs that is given to you by something higher. Otherwise, you would have already known the answer, but you didn't. You had to figure it out. So how do we bridge those worlds together? So what I did is that I started to notice that with Buddha specifically, I started to see more information about Nicholas Ashwa used to show up on my feed a lot. And he was really instrumental for me understanding thoroughly what the tarot was, right? Natalie over at the Artigan is someone that I actually, I want to be part of. I'm in her AIT program. And so one of the things I've learned with her is that she's welcoming to all people and she brings the vibration up. That's her focus. Her focus is to share what she knows in a way that allows you to then go and run with it and get your own information. So she gets a teaching environment, right? Or there's Aaron Doty, who I think his name's Doty. I'm sorry, buddy. You're so cute. You confuse the hell out of me. We're going to go with that. Straight as can be, by the way. But my point is that his brain, he blows your mind. That's his whole thing. And he really is successful at it. That he has a gift for understanding things that are complex. And he brings you information in a way that's non-invasive. Non-invasive or invasive, actually. He has a candid ability to speak to you at your own eye level. And I'll tell you something, Aaron. I've been on the bus in Los Angeles, and I'm not kidding you, at least 3 times. 3. I have run into somebody who's watching your content on their phone. And I find that very interesting. Just FYI, it's just a boost. I don't know if you need it, but just woohoo! It's really, really effective. And it's because he speaks the truth. Now, imagine what would happen if I got with Aaron and with Nicholas and with Natalie and who else? Water Star Vibes. I adore her. One of the best motivational people in the world. And she's spiritual. And she's very in control of her life. So what if the 5 of us got together and had a conversation in front of everybody? Imagine the expansion. Or what if someone like me got to speak to Oprah Winfrey, who is on a very spiritual path herself, and got to speak to Anderson Cooper in the same conversation and had a dinner party or something. But we didn't eat. It was just that's kind of just the background. We're there to actually engage these very in-depth conversations. Or how about even better? What if a spiritual powerhouse like me got to meet Bill Gates and Melinda Gates, and got to meet somebody else who's equally as spiritually powerful as I am, and we had an honest conversation where nobody judged the other person, and we were coming at it from an equal standpoint, and they knew that I wasn't out to get them, and I know that they weren't out to get me, and we would just fall in love with each other. It would be amazing, because you're meeting people at a point where you're trying to learn something different from someone else. You don't have to buy into shit. You should be able to stand in your own power and say, hey, I don't agree with that. And then engage why you don't agree with it. There is nothing wrong with saying, I don't agree with you on this level. Let's see if we can find a middle ground. If there's not, then there's not. But the world gets to learn from what you are sharing. And that is the power of what I'm speaking to in this turquoise leadership. This is something brand new. The world hasn't seen this because we get stuck in ego or reputation or pride. Kind of all of them kind of blend into each other, but the point is you get what I'm saying. You get stuck in this space where you care what other people think, but then you realize at some point that it doesn't matter. The divine, whatever you believe in, is the only thing that brings you any type of true sense of wholeness. So as long as you are growing, and as long as you are entering in this phase of exploration where you are willing to stand for your own value system and your own moral fiber and share to the world what it is and why you're coming from it, you have to understand that you are representing others who are just like you, who don't have the voice yet. But the more that we engage each other, the more that they realize they're being heard. That is the importance of energetic signature, and why this group is so important and why I'm one of the spokesmen is because I get it. I get the vision of it, and I get what it is. Like, for example, if we're in a debate and you ever hear me say rephrase, all it is a single word that all of you understand immediately. When I say rephrase, it means you're coming across one way or the other way. Rephrase, and then everybody will be able to understand what you're saying. That is the power I possess. And then there might be someone else who might have the ability to go, I don't know, another word that changes the dynamic of the energy, and so the group then follows the energy, and so then what we do is that every person feels validated in the conversation. There are people that I used to make fun of called teabaggers. Whoops, that Al. Tea party. And I really don't always get a lot of what their message is. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I would love to sit there and talk to a smart tea party member, someone who is coming at this from, like, let's say a universal standpoint, but does believe in the Tea Party motto or whatever it is, then that would be someone interesting. If it's someone defensive and then I'm going to have to sit there and it's just going to be a brick wall, then I'm not going to engage it. This is for the peer group who wants to grow and wants to learn, because the greatest testament to a divine source, whether it's God, Allah, Jesus, Christ, not always the same people. Remember, I have separate Jesus from Christ. There's Jesus Christ and in Christ, in my opinion. And so all of them have a loyalty to that energy. And that's one of the great tests that we're going through, especially now that we're entering the 7 years of tribulation. You are going to have to stand in your faith, and you're going to have to be able to avoid what they call the religious warfare thing, or spiritual warfare. Listen, y'all, you give your power away when you believe in that shit. I'm just going to tell you right now. The turquoise group, we're above that. It does not affect us, because we understand that there are multiple truths to one source of information. People from different vantage points can be equally valid on what they're trying to say and convey. So that's the important thing to remember in that statement, right? So, but in that situation, what you're doing is that your loyalty will be tested. That's the whole point. But imagine if you can find a peer group that values your test and helps you excel instead of fail it. Because if someone comes to me and they are very dogmatic, but they want to know something, then I'm willing to engage that conversation and not get frustrated with it, and to see if we can find a middle ground. That is power. That is what camaraderie, brotherhood, sisterhood is all about. That's what humanity needs to do, is not break each other down, but raise each other up. And so that's what you look for. So for me, I looked at my magic feed, and I looked at my general information, and I started to focus my attention on where I was hearing things that struck a chord with me, or that specifically did something that made my awareness grow. And that was what I wanted to do most. And so then what I did on the secondary front was that hold on one second. Sorry about that. There was my neighbors came in, so I just want to stop for a minute. So basically, when I wanted to continue on in this, is that's what we want to do. So when we value each other and bring each other the information, that it brings them a new possibility to expand their own faith, or to question it so that it becomes sounder and stronger, then you are honoring another person's soul, right? Because you're honoring their particular journey. And that's what the spiritual leadership should do. But in context of the turquoise group, we're not just spiritual, we're also leaders in business and in public speaking, and we are pioneers in space exploration, or we're looking at new data, or preventing cyber stalking and stuff like that, or ending child trafficking. All of those are incredibly important voices that all need to be heard and that are representative of what's going on with the people. And if the reporters don't want to do what they were doing anymore, then that means that we have the perfect opportunity now to step forward and do that. So in that way, what I would do is I find people that speak my language specifically, or that I feel a vibrational pull. Someone who makes me laugh but makes me learn is where my brain typically goes. Or someone who's incredibly gifted in what they're presenting to the world, I find worth value. And so you start to funnel your inner energy towards individuals who help you raise your own vibration and help you expand your own mind. You know what I mean? And understand that at some point, when you start to actually align yourself with the right people, you are going to find yourself reflective of each other. And you won't have known that they were going to say that. That's one of the great things about the training program for the past year and a half that we've been on, is that we didn't know what the others were saying. We were told to actually back off from looking at other people. Well, now we're able to look at each other, and now we're finding, if we backtrack, oh my God, he's been saying the same thing I've been saying. Well, then you have an answer from the divine that's crystal clear. You are connected to that person. You don't have to be like married or anything weird like that. Or I mean, you could be. I mean, the world is very... there are people who are coming into sacred union, and so more than likely, yeah, they're going to be drawn to each other in that way. But you're going to find that people echo you, that you weren't watching. And that's one of the great, powerful things. And it's one of the tests, to be honest with those of you who are coming into this grouping, is if you are ego-inflated or worried about people copying you, then this is not for you. You are immediately discounted. Because the divine is picking people who are willing to work together. And if you are all about ownership and you did this, I did it, blah, 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 then you can't make it, because you won't be able to represent the truth of anything. You will be worried about what. But the divine is handing you information. If you are truly spiritual, then you understand that the divine is handing you the same exact information as another person. How do you bring it forth? Is the message important enough for all of you to say the same thing? Yes. That's one of the topic points. And that's what this turquoise leadership would be working on. So find the voices that speak your language, those people who are expanding your horizon without making you feel like there's something negative. If they trigger you, an adult would say this: if they trigger you, then find out why you're being triggered. Nobody should ever trigger you anymore. You should be able to rise above that chaos. You should be able to look at someone and go, well, why am I giving my power away and reacting to this person? You should be neutral like Switzerland. You should just be like, okay, well, I don't agree with it. It's not impossible. You just have to face the fear. Whatever the question is that they're triggering, then just answer the question for yourself, and suddenly you're like, oh, well, what the hell was I worried about? Nothing. That is the wonderful glory of facing your fears, is that at some point you just go, what the hell was I thinking about? Why does this even matter to me? And suddenly you're just like, oh, it doesn't. I'm gonna go do my hair. So whatever, I don't know. But something that's very, like, it just takes the energy away from it, and it deflates it. And you find yourself now in a very empowered state, right? So that's one of the things I always warn about people who trigger you. Now, having said that, there are some things that should be triggering to all society. Child trafficking, abuse of animals, the corruption in politics, all of that stuff should be something that drives you a little crazy. But you can't emotionally invest in things where people have no morals or ethics. If they don't have morals and ethics, what are you expecting? You have to set the bar, but you can't do that unless you're willing to come to this table. So find the energy that begets the same energy, and you look at each other and you go, I don't agree with this point that you made. Like, okay, again, Bill Gates. I have this thing where I don't like the fact that he mentioned something about the shot. I'm not saying anything about him personally, but it's just a disagreement. But I'm still wanting to pick his brain about other stuff. Like, I have this fascination with science, and I have fascination with computers in particular. And so that's what I'm saying. But my energy is still, sorry, I didn't mean the point. My energy is still looking at him and his wife. And my energy is still looking at people who I don't agree with, because what they bring to the table is something of true value. I don't know all the answers. If I did, I wouldn't be here. And so I'm willing to explore these things and talk about these things because they help society. And when we have these open dialogues with each other, with the people that we know will be supportive and nurturing of the fact that we disagree, then what happens is the world starts to see that they are able to ask questions for themselves. And that is incredibly powerful. You want to be a divine being, as someone who works with the divine directly, then you have to be willing to stand in that space and ask the question that people may not like. Because the divine wants to grow as well. We are here as divine beings. If you want to be a divine being, then you have to stand in front of the world and say, hey, I'm not afraid of you. I'm going to answer this question for you. And then, like, be sometimes the devil advocate. Like, and you can say it. I always say this to people that I'm in a debate with, especially when I was younger. I would say, I don't disagree with you at all, but I need to be the devil's advocate here. What about this? And you know what happens? I've actually been turned around because I've asked the opposing side's question, and the person answered it incorrectly or answered it in a way that was truthful, that made me go, oh, well, I'm on their side now. Because that's evolution. We have to be able to ask these questions. So find those people identify them. I have a list, and I look at them every day. Well, not every day, but I look at them whenever they cross my feed. Because, like I said, I have a magic feed. And if you understand the matrix and how the matrix operates, and you understand that there's a lot of questions as to who's real, what's not real, and all that stuff. And so instead of getting dogmatic or weird about it, I'm like, my world is falling. I look at the world and go, okay, the world needed to fall because, like, dude, child trafficking, sex scandals, all this stuff, and we need to evolve. And how does beauty come from? Sometimes from the worst things. And so, find your vibrational output, find the people who speak your language, find a way to come together, and that's what I'm working on. Energetically, that's what these videos are. We have to find a way to do this. And instead of me sitting here trying to do everything by myself all the time, I'm just putting it out there to attract people. And I'm attracting, I know for exact fact, I have 10 people that I see every day that check my stuff. And so those 10 people are who I'm attracting, and that's who I want to work with. You see what I'm saying? And so, but if you're not willing to put it out there and you're always afraid that someone will take your idea, well, okay, was it your idea? Or did the divine hand you something that was to go to someone else? What is yours is yours. It will always be yours. You know what I mean? And you don't understand karma then. Because karma doesn't allow someone to take something that someone else is without a consequence to them. So it usually fails and goes down in flames because it wasn't theirs to have. But you can't get what you need sometimes unless you're willing to stand on your own throne, if you will, and say, hey, this is where we're at. Anybody want to join? And if nobody responds, it's not time yet. But you keep going. You keep going, because I'm telling you right now, we are pulling together this turquoise leadership, and it's almost Easter. So before 70 years of tribulation is, all of us are going to have a week. This is a week where everyone is thinking about it. Everyone who sees this is going to think about it, and it's going to grow as time goes on. If they're invited by the divine into the conversation, it will grow. I don't need to worry about the how or when or why, because it's bogging me down, and I just don't care. I'm not here to be popular. I'm here to make a difference. I'm not here to play the game. I'm here to change the game. I'm not here to sit there and stroke someone else's dick when I can stroke my own. You know what I mean? Like, and frankly, it's a lot quicker and less messy. But stand in your power, and you bring other powerful people to you because they want to know what you know. And I just totally fucked up my public speaking thing. I'm still learning, y'all. But my value is that I look at the world so differently than other people do. And I'm happy all of the time. Every day of my life. Okay, not every... There was a moment the other day when I had my period. I'm just going to tell y'all right now, I was riding the cotton pony here, and I had my moment. But I learned to purge. Here's the thing. When you know that you're on the verge of something fantastic, if you're about to break something open, and you're about to join a lot of peer group that may make you feel insecure, if you don't purge this, then they do make you insecure. But if you just let it out, if you let your emotions go, then you become unemotional about it. And suddenly your world changes. And so things that you are thinking about are no longer negative. It's just a question. You see what I'm saying? So your brain will trigger things. Like the other day I was walking on the street, and someone in my head had made a nasty comment about my background. And my response was epic. I don't know who this was to. I'm just going to tell you what it was, though. Instead of getting emotional about it, I just go, well, that's very fascinating, because here I am with my own empire, with that education background that you seem to have taken issue with, and here you are overly educated, taking the time to try to bring me down. What does that say about you? And I just politely, in my head, turned around and walked away. No idea where this thought came from. It wasn't my idea, but it was something that possibly can happen down the road. But what did it show me is that I don't have to worry about anybody ever. Because I know that I am equipped, and that the divine has me and has my back, and will give me the words to say what I need to say. And notice there was no emotion, there was no ego, there was no nothing there. I just literally spoke back to them. Because that is the sense of power, that is the sense of who you are, right? And it's not an ego trip, it's something that you just possess, because you understand that you bring value to the world. So you don't take it from people, you don't do that, but you find an elegant way to say something that makes a big impact. But notice that was never something that my lower expression would have ever thought of. It would have been like a name-calling, nasty little bitchy thing, and like, oh, this whole drama thing. And this is very non-dramatic. Everybody in the room that would be around it would go, and that would be it. No one would say anything. It wouldn't be drama. Well, maybe with the person that I just slayed, but they brought it on themselves. You should never try to put anybody else down to make yourself feel better, because it's a false reality. If you can't stand in your own power and be grateful for the fact that you're even meeting someone else who actually did something you couldn't do, not grateful, that sounds weird. Be thankful for the fact that you're meeting another person from a different vantage point that may have had to work differently than you had. If you can't say thank you to the universe for learning something new from that person, then you have the issue, not the person. And that's like a detachment thing that you have to learn to do. And I'm a Cancerian Leo rising, so I'm really out there and stuff like that. But for a long time, you could hurt my feelings sometimes, which was very odd because it was only people I knew. Strangers, I've never cared. Never cared. I was one of those popular kids. I didn't understand why I was popular, and it was kind of because I was a little bit of a bitch, and I'd just look at people and I would cut them down like that. But if they were someone I knew and like a friend to me or a friend circle, that would get my feelings. And so now that's been sealed up. The only person who probably can get me now is probably whoever my partner is going to be. But that's just understanding myself. And so when you stand in your own personal power like that, what I'm saying is that you change the way that you operate in the world, and so the people around you will appreciate that new energy. It's something different that's very natural that happens with us. And so imagine a group of peers that you are able to engage in, and that would be the biggest thing that happened, would be that moment. And then they'd be like, well, he can handle himself, and that would be it. No drama. No drama. Right? And so that's something really powerful. And if the world starts to see that people from different perspectives can avoid shit like that, but if they do have it to interact like that, where it's not big old name calling, all this stuff, then the world grows. And that's what we're trying to do. And then with the topic of karma, because I mentioned it and I forgot how I got off on this tangent, but with the subject of karma, remember that karma is attached to all things that happen in the world. Anything that you are balancing out in your own life. So if you inflict some harm or violence onto something, whether it be an animal or a person, then you are attacked, you get karma. And you can also do positive karma, where you put so much good into the world that karma comes back to you. Karma is a cyclical thing that goes with your life. Typically, most people want to pay their karma off with a life cycle, right? They don't want to go into the next life, but because then you start to accrue karma after karma, and suddenly your soul has a lifetime where they must pay the karma. If they, like, let's say that you are about to become a master, and you have mastered the physical world, there's going to come, if you haven't paid your karma, there comes a penalty life cycle. So just be aware of that, because you have to pay that karma off in order to step into the new freshness. And like right now, notice that there's a sound going off in the background. Okay. When you stand in yourself and you understand what you're trying to convey, it doesn't matter. You will still be with me even though you hear the sound in the background. That's the power of this particular group that we're pulling together. But with the karma, remember that it's always good to pay your own karma off as you go in life, because no matter how much it sucks in a moment, trust me, there are life cycles like one I had where it was like just one thing after the other, never successful. And instead of being negative about it, I just went, oh, I guess I had some karma. Growth. And so we're trying to make that happen for all of society in a way that doesn't take their rights away or kind of dictate to them what they should or shouldn't do. Because when you do that, you take ownership of their karma. FYI. Okay. So having said that, one of the great things that I used to do not that long ago is that I used to do this thing called Ask the Master or Elders. And what it was is I would think about like different masters and elders that have come before us that have been teachers to the world and have done really great things. And I always ask myself, well, what would they do? And the best way to do that is first kind of get familiar with who they are, and then you can kind of assess which one you are more in alignment with. So to begin, I wanted to go ahead and I wrote it down. So I wanted to give you a list of some of the ascended masters that they speak of. So Jesus, which you all know, the Kumara, we have Buddha, Maitreya, Confucius, Lord Lanto, Mary, Mother of Jesus, Lady, Master Nada, Enoch, Saint Germain, and Kuthumi. All are different masters that all of you could look up and find out information about. And I wanted to showcase at least one of them in some of these build-up conversations that we're having. And so I decided that today would be a good day to talk about my mentor, the Buddha, who has personally helped me along my path and has actually helped me spiritually in a lot of ways. And so Gautama Buddha was a philosopher, medicated spiritual teacher, and leader who lived in ancient India, known as the Enlightened One, who is believed to have transcended karma and escaped the cycle of birth and rebirth. His teachings are based on the insights of suffering. Hello, Master of Sorrow here. And the end of a state called nirvana. He is someone who awakens to understand the mechanism which keeps people trapped in the cycle of death and rebirth. The Buddha taught a spiritual path that included ethical training and meditative practices, such as mindfulness. Noteworthy is that he was critical of the priest, of the Brahmin priest, for things like such as animal sacrifice. Jeez, I can't imagine why he picked me. I don't mean to be critical. I just raise questions. That's all I'm saying. But there's a parallel there, and I thought that was funny. So, just so you guys know, nirvana is the Buddhist tradition commonly been interpreted as the extinction of the three fires, which are greed, aversion, and ignorance. When extinguished, they relieve the cycle of death and rebirth. Ethical training is an internal awareness of an intentional behavior to the commitment path of liberation. It's an ethical compass within self and relationships based on sila, a code of conduct that embraces a commitment to harmony and self-restraint with the principal motivation of being nonviolent or freedom from causing harm. Some might even consider it a virtue. Now, can you imagine what we as in the world leadership could do if sometimes we channeled that energy and thought about what Buddha would do? So Buddha really was all about the liberation movement and moving away from the materialism world, right? And so he not only did something amazing for himself, but he transcended it and he gave it to the world. And now millions of people around the world are Buddhist. Now, I'm not saying go out and build like a religion because, again, that we're trying to move away from the whole religion thing in the sense that, well, here's the thing. No, I don't want to say that. Religion will always have value, especially in my heart and in the world. I'm not saying that we should move away from that. But when you are formative, you have to go through a phase where you're called a cult. And that's part of the process in order to become a religion, right? And so understand that unless you're willing to walk that fire, which he was, but there wasn't something called a cult in those days. Remember, things have changed a little bit. So just be willing to stand in your power. If you're willing to build a religion, then know that it's not something where you can just kill yourself. And like, we've seen cults in the past that just like everybody carries themselves and it's like all done. You can't do that. Like that's a crime against humanity, actually. But what I'm saying is be able to walk through the fire of building, because you have to go through the whole phase where people call you a cult and all of this stuff. And if you can't stand in that power, then it's just going to destroy you. And that's where it becomes corruptive. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I'm saying we're moving away from religion, is because the religions that existed are going through their own stuff right now, and so we leave that to the people who are in charge of that reformation. But what I'm saying, for those of you who want to build something new, I would say build like a spiritual center, or build something that brings everybody together. If you are uniting the planet and not being divisive, and then you're probably going to be more interested in building something that's like your own branch of spirituality or something like that. So just be aware of verbiage, because it's a big thing right now. I don't mean to roll my eyes, but it is really like the words you choose are spells that you cast. And so be aware that no matter what religion or whatever background you come from, what you speak is what you get. And so understand that with the turquoise leadership, what we're working on is something that begets happiness, joy, unity, abundance, and a sense of empowerment to the people. Like that's what this is all about. There's a whole question of whether we're an illusion or whether we are a memory or whether, as Aaron said, we're a dream. Whatever the reality is, we are innately able to change our environment if we become able to possess the ability to be judicious and to handle the manifestation properly. Remember, Ascension teaches us that we are able now to not have to drop the body, the physical incarnation, in order to rise into the next level. That the 5D, the fifth dimension, which is where the spirit realm would be, and the masters are and so forth, is now coming to meet the third dimension. Now, remember, I have this theory that it doesn't stay that way. There's going to come a rubber band effect where those who are worthy, the 144, are going to go, the 144,000 are going to go disappear, and the 5D will go back to 5D, and then everybody in the 3D must finish out the 3D course, right? So that's a personal theory. But imagine what that conversation would be like if I got to speak to other incredible leaders around the world, scientists, NASA people, biologists, Oprah Winfrey, entertainment people who have a big brain, Mike, the wonderful woman who's the neuroscientist, Sheldon. I mean, like all those people, and then add in the fact that we have all of these spiritual leaders, evangelical preachers, all of this stuff. If all of them came to a table and had a conversation, and it started at something very informal, and then we got the vibration down, and we started to see who went with who, then imagine all of the groups that could form that would bring the world harmony, that would bring the world a better sense of self, a wonderful sense of what it is to be a divine being. Imagine what the universe would give that civilization in exchange for rising to meet the occasion. Isn't that something wonderful to focus on? That is what the turquoise leadership is about, and that's why I'm calling you all in. Let's start working together. Stop worrying about reputation, all that stuff. It's all material. It's all fake. None of it matters. Remember what Justine Bateman had said. It's all an illusion. They're going to reflect back to you whatever you invest your energy in. So if you invest in disharmony, anger, sexism, homophobia, all of it, then that's all you're never going to rise above that. You're always going to have that environment. But what about those of us who want something bigger and better for us and for humanity? What of us who have children in the future, who I have like 4 that are waiting to come? They're not coming until I feel that it's safe and that I can give them the financial abundance that I never had. So for me, I have like a path, and I have a vision, and I hold the keys to the vision of something else that's much bigger, but I also have the vision for my own life. And so until I feel like that's satiated, I love the fact that I would have kids, and because I never thought I would, but now I have 4 that I know that have introduced themselves to me, and I know that when I bring them into the earth, when they're ready to be born, that it's going to be under the right conditions. And I can't get there if I know, because the first one's going to be female, possibly, and I don't want her born into a sexist society that rapes her and beats her and all that stuff. I'm not going to do it. That's my own personal thing. So if I have to come back another life cycle, then that's where I will come back another life cycle. But why not give it an opportunity to bring our children up in a world that we never had? Isn't that the point of being a master of your domain? If you are a public speaker who is worth $1 million now, then wouldn't you want your child to have that same availability had you not had gone first? Sometimes nepotism, there comes a point where nepotism, for a child that is willing to handle nepotism well, then they change and go out of the shadow, out of the other person's legacy, and they create something of their own. But we have a society that's built on staying within everyone else's shadow and being afraid to go into the light and being their own light. Well, I want to bring my children up in a world that has light. A child that is born naturally light and brings their own unique quality to the world, and embrace that. That's my vision. And a lot of you may scoff and say that that's not possible. I'm telling you right now, the world got reset. What you thought was true is no longer true. And that's not like a dig, that's the truth. Everything came crashing down. All of you lost everything. Everything is now, and everybody's at a mutual point right now. Some people may have a little bit more economic stability for now, but we're going through the tribulation. So it's going to be a test of character and a test of how we as a society can bridge the gap and make a way out for ourselves. And those of us at Turquoise Leadership are going to be the pioneers of that. That's what I'm offering and what I'm bringing to the world. If you're interested, let me know. 818-984-5339 or KAHMOOS at Amazon.com. That's it for me, guys, on Altruistic Channel. My name is Al. Have a great day. Bye.